Live right now. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christian Arana, and I am the Policy Director at the Latino Community Foundation. It's such an honor for me to moderate this discussion today with these young students, these young entrepreneurs, these young dreamers, these young, if I could be quite frank, young badasses. They are so impressive. And I know they spent such a long time, and I know they've worked very hard to prepare these presentations here for you today. And first, I want to introduce Cici Vasquez, who wants to provide an overlying message from the CAPS 2020 Economic Recovery Project cohort. So Cici, I'll kick it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Cici Vasquez. I'm a recent UC Irvine graduate. And just an overview of our project that we're going to be presenting today. So our CAPS cohort has become very passionate throughout the year over the course of the program, trying to come up with solutions for our community. It's no doubt that the coronavirus led to unprecedented times here in the US for our country, and COVID-19 overall revealed the nation's neglect in public health, education, small business stability, and the nation's reliance on tourism and travel. So the overlying message is we realize that recovery isn't just survival. COVID served as a time for people to reset, and now it's a time for us, to think big, to think outside the box. We need to reconstruct old ways of thought, and the CAPS 2020 cohort has chosen to acknowledge disparities in all sectors of our economy and ultimately use innovation and to empower sustainable resiliency. So that's the overlying message of our project that we're going to present here today.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cici. And like Cici mentioned, I hope everyone that's watching this right now has a pen and paper. I know I do, because I'm ready to take notes, because like she mentioned, we're living in uncertain times right now. And the old ways of doing business may not work today. This is a new situation that many of us have not dealt with. So creativity really is the key. And so we're relying on these young people to provide us with awesome information about what we can do to handle this virus. So Cici, I'll turn it to you first, actually, for the first question. For you, what's the greatest concern with how the US government has responded to the coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, so as we all know, the government, responded with congressionally approved legislation such as the CARES Act and the HEROES Act, and even now there's discussion of additional second round of funding. The federal government spent over $810 billion trying to back small businesses up during this time and keep people employed during the coronavirus pandemic. But through our in-depth analysis, we realized that not every business was actually able to receive funding. We're totally aware that funding isn't endless and not everyone is going to be able to receive, a grant or whatever it is. But we did notice that there are some trends as to who did and who didn't receive funding, and that overall was what we were most concerned with. We noticed that when the SBA released who was receiving the grants, it wasn't your typical small businesses that we'd expect to see. We saw a lot of chain restaurants, software companies, kind of the larger small businesses. So you can say some people even rumored celebrities were receiving grants. So that was one of our greatest concerns in the response to the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question to that, Cici. What are some reasons why this disparity existed between who got funding and who didn't? Why do you think that was?
So some of the trends that we saw were language barriers. As we know, a lot of small business owners are either first generation immigrants and English might be their second language. It could also be lack of awareness as to where to find these applications and how to navigate this information. These applicants might have been very complex and confusing to any person who might not know where to find these or how to navigate with them once they have them. And also Congress was consistently changing the requirements, and it makes it really difficult to decipher who was eligible and who wasn't. A lot of small businesses expressed their frustration that big companies might have had people assigned to, actually work out the applications, and small businesses just didn't have that capacity. And so that might have been, a reason as to why they didn't receive funding.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of complicated issues that led to the funding disparity for small businesses. And just one last question for you, Cici. Let's say that you're the next small business administrator of the United States of America. What are some ideas that you think that we can start to turn back and help small businesses during this pandemic?
Yeah, so there are thousands of ideas. I think that's what ultimately this presentation is for. We need to reconstruct the old ways of thought. For the issue in particular, I would want to first start with demystifying the stigmas of how to receive help. Many people don't trust banks and don't know the difference between loans and grants or interest and how that works. So education is critical, but it needs to be implemented in ways where you're meeting people where they are. So for example, social media is a great avenue as to how to provide information, reaching businesses that aren't connected to networks through Facebook or WhatsApp. The platforms that they're using, maybe TV, commercials, Telemundo, Univision, you name it. We really, need to get innovative and meet people where they are, whether that's creating workshops through these self-help centers that are located in the courts, just really trying to reach people from where they're already receiving their information. And I think also, aside from education, something that is overlooked, and it's a critical part of this discussion, is the process of funding in local governments and civic engagement. Every city actually received their own funding, and it's up to the residents to investigate where the cities are putting this money towards, and if they agree, and then if they don't agree, tell their representatives, our city received this funding and I would want it to see it go here, not just at a federal level, but at a local level. So ultimately, innovation, it's clear it's time for change. The old system isn't serving everyone. And I think that ultimately this project is going to show ways on how we can do that in all levels of the economy.
Well, great. Yeah, that sounds like you have some really amazing ideas. So you're hired. I'm going to nominate you if I become president. So thank you for that, Cece. Jesse, I will turn to you next for the next question. So number one, if you can introduce yourself to the audience. But my question for you is that, we are obviously going through a crisis with with the coronavirus, but this is something that has been plaguing our small business owners for a very long time, even before this pandemic. So in the work that you've done, I mean, what monetary policy changes have been done to combat the last few recessions, and how are they helpful during today's pandemic-induced recession?
Thank you, Christian, for that question. My name is Jesse Law. I'm currently a fourth year at the University of California, Berkeley. So recently, the International Monetary Fund have projected a reduction in the global GDP of 4.9%. Obviously, that's trillions of dollars just gone from the world economy. In terms of more of a local level, the U.S. has used tools such as the discount rate, reserve requirements, open market operations, and the interest on reserves. So essentially what this will do, it will increase credit and the money supply within these communities that really need them. In a moment's notice, many people need grants and those loans. And as Cece pointed out, many people don't know how to use them. So recently, there are not more programs than ever to help these people try to get them. Major stimulus bills were just passed recently, as Cece mentioned, that will now increase the money flow throughout the economy. One of the biggest issues is unemployment. Whenever unemployment is high, usually you'll see low growth of inflation. So therefore, one of the most important things that the Fed has pointed out is that their goal is to always keep a stable rate of inflation so that people's money doesn't become valueless over time. Now, one more important thing that they've done is to pass these stimulus bills so that the people who needed them could afford to have their small businesses keep on running and take on the brunt of the COVID pandemic. And as Desiree will point out later, we can even focus on a more local level by having chambers of commerce play a very, very key role in that aspect.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jesse. Yeah, it just goes to show that there's so many ways to help out small businesses from the local level all the way up to the federal level, as you just talked about, and at the international level with the with the IMF that you just mentioned. So Desiree, he name checked you, so I'll go to you next. So number one, if you could also introduce yourself to the audience, but as Jesse helped set you up, we have an audience here that works a lot with local chambers of commerce. So in the work and the research that you've done, I mean, how have chambers of commerce supported small businesses, and what can they do? I mean, this is a very pivotal moment in our state and country's history. What can they do to continue supporting as we continue to grow from this pandemic?
Right. So my name is Desiree Tariquez. I'm a recent graduate from UC Irvine. And when I think of chambers of commerce, personally, I think of my professional family. I've been involved with Chambers of Commerce for over a year now. And in that year, I've received so many resources and opportunities that really helped me to grow as a professional. And let me tell you, as a first generation Latina student, it's so impactful to have a community that can answer questions that I didn't even know to ask. How do you know what you don't know, right? Now, when you think about what it's going to take for a small business to survive and continue to grow during and after this pandemic, I think back to that question of how do you know what you don't know? And that's where Chambers of Commerce come in. I think first, one of the biggest things is providing resources to small businesses, whether it's a local mom and pop shop or the local elotero. I think it's super important that all these businesses have a well-established organization that they can build community with, that they have people who are going to advocate for their benefit and learn information that they didn't even know they were missing in order to thrive. Chambers of Commerce have been around for a while. The California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was established in 1967, which may not seem like a long time, but in that time, they have supported small businesses through multiple recessions, including the 2008 Great Recession. And it's imperative to go back and see not only where we succeeded, but how we can do better going forward. Additionally, I think it's as important to ensure that the people behind these businesses are participating in civic engagement, just like Cece was mentioning, and they're able to go to Chambers of Commerce and learn how to do this effectively for themselves and their business. We have done an amazing job of using technology and social media to give our business community the resources they need, but it might not be enough. Let's take the census, for example. I feel like this year we've seen more census campaigning than I ever did in 2010. Granted, I was 13 years old then, but with the advancement of technology and social media presence, there are 13-year-olds now who are more knowledgeable on the census than I ever was at that age. Yet, well, this is because of social media, advancement and technology. Yet California only had a self-response rate of about 1% greater than we did in 2010. And I use this example because I think we need to use that same momentum when it comes to voting by continuing to use social media and technology, but also really make those personal connections to ensure our communities are voting. The other day, I had a family member call me and ask me if I can help them figure out their ballot and learn what everything means. This was somebody who wasn't really passionate about voting. They did it because they kind of felt like they had to, but didn't really know what everything meant and how to learn about it, which is so similar to so many people in our communities. So for them to reach out to me and ask for help on researching props and candidates on local and national levels shows me that the discussion of voting's out there, but now we need to answer questions and help our community learn how to use their voice effectively. Christian, you actually introduced me to a great technique of reaching out to three people who don't vote or perhaps not really sure what information they need to make educated decisions on voting, and I absolutely loved it. I think if we all did that, then the huge gap between Latinos who are eligible to vote and Latinos who are registered to vote would decrease dramatically, allowing for more voices to be heard. Overall, advocating, educating, providing important information is going to be one of the biggest ways Chambers of Commerce can support small businesses in their community and growing from this pandemic.
Well, thank you so much, Desiree. You're speaking my language. Make sure to get out the vote, people. I'll keep referring to this throughout the presentations today. So thank you for that. And then the final person for this section, I'll turn to Mateo next. So Mateo, in your opinion, I mean, what are some additional resources that can help small businesses while we continue to move through this pandemic? Because we know this is not going away anytime soon. So we know there's still going to be a need for resources. So what are they?
Right. So my name is Mateo Galvez. I'm an undergraduate at San Francisco State University. Honestly, I have did extensive research, and there's a lot of programs like the PPP loans, the IDA loans. They're all over, and a lot of small business owners weren't able to obtain to the requirements, or they just missed out. So for my research, I found that opportunities. A lot of them are closed, and there's many resources that are unavailable. So my idea, and for an entrepreneur myself, I thought taking matter in your own hands. So there's a lot of crowdfunding platforms out there like Kiva.org, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, GoFundMe. So as a Latino business owner or a business owner in general, I think it's time for you to take matter in your own hands and run a Kickstarter platform campaign and see who's out there in your community that could be able to back your business. Obviously, there's a a lot of people that are wanting to help small business as we're in, and there's a lot of business owners that want to support others. So as a business owner that's hearing this message, I recommend you guys checking out these platforms to leverage your own network, your own opportunities. But also I found from my research, American Express, they have their own website. It's called Stand for Small. So this website is particularly just designed for small business owners. And what this was specifically made for business owners that are breaking digital economy. And a lot of business owners that are in the brick and mortar are having a hard time transitioning. So I definitely recommend you guys checking out that website. It's called Stand for Small from American Express. And this has extensive resources, insights on tools. I actually personally have my small business, and this website actually helped me understand how digital marketing works. And there's great tools out there that a lot of small business owners need to understand. So take matter in your own hands. Don't be afraid to just start your own campaign, and you guys don't always have to depend on the government or any other loans or grants. So check them out. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mateo. I hope people heard that. I know he was coming in and out. Yeah, and I think the bigger message here is don't be afraid to ask for help, right? There's a lot of resources out there. Maybe we'll hook up Mateo with a hotspot after this to help him get a better Wi-Fi. But Desiree, Mateo, Jesse, and Cece, thank you so much. And we will turn to the next set of participants, presenters. So we'll invite Sebastian, Salvador, and Sandra. So you guys want to turn on your cameras. So during this section, we're going to talk a little bit more about how COVID-19 has affected particular sectors in the economy. I want to make sure we're all here. Yeah, I think we're all here. So Sebastian, I will turn to you first. How has the tourism sector, because this has been in the news a lot in the last couple of months in relation to COVID-19. So how has the tourism sector been affected by COVID-19, and how has that impacted the small business community?
Thank you, Christian, and hello, everyone. My name is Sebastian Figueroa. I'm currently a third-year astrophysics student at UCLA. And to answer your question, Christian, it's important to consider the state that the economy is in, being a recession. And because of that, more superfluous sectors like tourism have definitely taken significant hits. The new health and safety protocols that are also being enforced especially impact the operations of businesses in this sector. The effects on the tourism sector have been significant on both a local and national scale, affecting local enterprises that are especially important to California, as well as tourist attractions nationwide. Consider, for example, local landmarks like Yosemite National Park, which represents an archetypal California destination. While still experiencing the adverse effects of the pandemic, its status as a spacious outdoor attraction means it is not even as affected as much as destinations like the infamously high-volume Disneyland parks. Major shutdowns across various industries have led to a drastic increase in unemployment, which has grown to nearly 15%. The important consequence for the tourism sector is that the increasingly affected by unemployment generally has less expendable income to use on travel, hitting these industries hard. Furthermore, whether or not people even have the money to travel may not be pertinent, as many travel locations and attractions are not even open to the public due to fear of higher transmission rates and more cases of COVID-19.
Great. Well, yeah. And I'm going to ask you another question, but I think if you can speak closer to your microphone just to hear you a little bit better. In addition to that, with the tourism sector, Sebastian, I mean, how has the entertainment sector been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? And how has this also affected the small business community? I'm greatly concerned that I'm going to run out of things to watch on Netflix. So if you give me insight about how the entertainment sector has been affected by this, that would be awesome to get your answer as well.
Of course. While there are many small businesses in the entertainment sector, restaurants and other enterprises that are accustomed to revenue brought from large entertainment events are suffering the so-called ripple effects. Concerts and sporting events are key examples of such a phenomenon. Concerts, and more specifically music festivals like Coachella and Stagecoach, have continued to be canceled this year. Landlords in these areas operating like small businesses in many ways are receiving drastically less demand for their offerings than they would have under normal circumstances. Similarly, restaurants in these areas that normally experience their peak season during these festivals are also missing out. Excuse me. They're also missing out on a large portion of their yearly revenue, which places stress on owners and as well as employees. In much the same vein, concerns over coronavirus are resulting in the cancellation of nearly half of scheduled sporting events in 2020. Workers like self-employed food vendors are losing essentially the entirety of their income. And sport events which also represent a small subset of tourism, which means that that the tourism industries are also being affected by the stagnation of entertainment events.
Great, great. And just one final question for you, Sebastian, before we let you go. But can you identify any companies or, let's say, industries within tourism and entertainment that are experiencing the effects of COVID-19 in ways that affect both sectors?
Yeah, it's definitely clear that these effects don't only affect the two sectors individually, but also in ways that show a connection between them. For example, amusement parks are a major part of California culture with locations like Six Flags, Knott's Berry Farm, and Disneyland. While they serve as important tourism hubs, they are also staples of California entertainment, meaning that the closure of parks like Disneyland represents a significant hit to both tourism and entertainment in the state. Another pertinent example lies in the film industry. While it is primarily a part of the entertainment sector, the Hollywood neighborhood serves as a famous tourist attraction that exists at a crossroads with movie consumption. Not only were movie theaters across the country shut down as the pandemic swept the US, but production on TV shows and films were also halted nationwide. Experts estimate that global losses already totaled 5 billion by March. However, while these adverse effects initially seem to only impact larger businesses, that very same Hollywood ecosystem is built upon the groundwork established by a flourishing community of people and small businesses, the same community that stands as the foundation of tourism and entertainment as a whole. Clearly, this crisis necessitates action, resources, and changes, and these are topics that our next speakers will explore. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian. So Salvador, I'll go to you next. If you can introduce yourself to the audience watching this right now, but also just digging in a little bit deeper to what Sebastian was talking about. I mean, can you provide specific examples about how these effects have essentially been manifested in small businesses within the tourism sector?
Yes, well, hello everyone. My name is I am here at California State University, Long Beach, studying consumer affairs with a minor in communication studies. And to answer your question, one example that we noticed was the rideshare services. They are used by people in their local vicinities, but are also important resources for travelers. Users and other similar companies have seen their demand significantly decrease. For example, Uber CEO reported that gross bookings in Seattle, a COVID-19 epicenter in the US, are down by 60 to 70%. Other major cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York City are experiencing similar declines. Another service that has been significantly impacted would be rental car companies such as Hertz, Turo, and Enterprise. They are struggling with a similar drop in demand. Even though people are flocking to services like these similar of public transportation, Turo reported that 75% drop in bookings from a year ago. Homestay services like Airbnb through technology large companies also contain aspects of small business with their networks of hosts. Airbnb reported that 1,900 employees, which represent about 25% of its workforce. And lastly, hospitality services like hotels that have been assisting and making various sacrifices to help cause the fight to decline the spread of COVID-19 have also been impacted as well.
Wow, yeah, I didn't know all that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Sandra, if you can hear me, I know we had some tech problems before. Looks like you're smiling, you can hear me. Okay, good. So we'll turn to you last, Sandra. So if you could also introduce yourself to the audience. And likewise, similar to Salvador, I mean, can you provide specific examples of how these effects have manifested in businesses within the entertainment sector as well?
Yes, thank you. My name is Sandra Sandoval. I am a fourth-year student studying business administration at UC Riverside, and that is an excellent question. The entertainment industry has taken a huge blow due to COVID, and all over the world, live entertainment events have been canceled as countries put in place their stay-at-home orders and really focus on lockdown restrictions in order to slow the spread of the virus. Through the new obstacles, stresses, and many other negative impacts on mental health, many people are on the search for outlets of entertainment, and people just want to have fun. And companies have been working diligently to find a way to help people while making sure we stay safe. It has had an especially devastating effect on the live music scene due to the cancellation of major tours and global festivals like Sebastian mentioned, No More Stagecoach, Coachella, Rolling Loud, or just to name a few in California anyway. And companies in this industry insist on rising above the limitation of the pandemic. They want to provide a platform for entertainment, and they want to focus on innovation and adaptation in order to save the industry. And all over the world, organizers are experimenting with ways to bring people together, like virtual events, which what we're doing right now. You can see me, you can hear me, and I have seen other speakers as well on this platform. And they're also really experimenting with drive-in concerts, which work the same way as drive-in movie theaters. And however, there is one specific innovation that I would like to focus on, and that is not in California, not in the US, but actually in the UK, there is a new pop-up venue called the Virgin Money Unity Arena. And they are changing the game. They are bringing us back to normal, and they are really an inspiration for a lot of different outlets and people who want to host concerts. The way they made this work, which I know can sound weird, like what? How is there a social distance concert? I had never heard of it. It sounds weird, but they actually made it work. They made sure that distancing is enforced on arrival, cars are parked over 2 meters apart, and of course, there is mandated PPE equipment. Temperature checks on arrival are required before they're guided to their own outdoor platformed private viewing area. It has railings, seating, and it is 2 meters away from any other group of people. And food and drinks are served through an app. So it's actually really cool, and it's not any more dangerous or risky than going out to eat in an outdoor area. And many businesses who earn revenue from events like this, where people have to come together and watch someone on a stage, like concerts, comedy shows, or even professional conferences, maybe in the future, can learn from the precautions that were taken by this company. And when all safe events are happening, it will benefit this local small businesses and communities surrounding them.
Wow, that's awesome. So it sounds like the next chamber convention is going to happen in a parking lot next year. So, save the day, people. So thank you so much to Sebastian, Salvador, and Sandra for this section. So turning next to another critical intersection between COVID, the business community, is also the topic of healthcare. So I want to invite, Sebastian is still on, but I also want to invite Nicole, Magali, and Anna for this part as well. And Sebastian, I'm going to make you work a little bit here. So I want to turn to you for the next question. So what are some of the resources businesses can use to ensure that they are following health and safety guidelines during this pandemic?
Well, it's clear that the sheer extent of this pandemic has helped reveal the fragility of our economy, as well as the inexorable ways of life that people and businesses have come to know. It's incredibly important for small businesses to use this trying time as a learning opportunity to not only recover from the current pandemic, but also to be better prepared and educated for possible future crises. One important method of doing so would be to seek out the relevant resources to build a foundation for consistent and reputable implementations of health and safety protocols. While the weight of the recession and financial hardship will catalyze difficulties in this pursuit, it's imperative to uphold these protocols to ensure the success and longevity of the small business ecosystem that exists in our state. To begin to build this foundation for the practice of these protocols, it's both beneficial and important to look at current events to help bolster this road to recovery and resilience, for they will be among the most accessible and relevant resources available. Specifically, we can look to some of the biggest businesses in the country as precedents for rolling out new health and safety protocols in the COVID-19 world. For example, we can examine a case study completed by the publication USA Today on what Disney is doing to reopen safely and how other tourism and entertainment spots can adapt accordingly. The study detailed the various measures the Disney Corporation put in place in their locations and how these measures would be implemented. They included enhanced protective measures, physical distancing, temperature checks, limited contact enhancements, and enhanced cleaning and sanitation. While these protocols span many different aspects of a business's operation, it's clear that they can be widely applicable to a wide variety of small businesses across our state and country. By utilizing precedents like the one set by Disney, these small businesses can build a robust portfolio of protocols that not only increase the health and safety of their employees and customers, but also contribute to the greater good in our state and nation's fight for resiliency during this pandemic.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sebastian. Nicole, I want to turn to you next. If you can also introduce yourself to the audience, but just tagging along to what Sebastian said, I mean, how has the CDC health policies influence and transform businesses during this pandemic?
Thank you, Christian. My name is Nicole Balbuena. I am currently a student at UC Berkeley, mastering in social welfare. So to answer your question, Christian, what we are seeing now, Christian, is how the CDC has transformed small businesses internally and externally. While companies have to follow standard federal and state policies and protocols when providing services to their clients, we really have to think about how the CDC has become a prominent decision maker. You know, Christian, essentially the CDC is changing the business's organizational culture and landscape on how companies should operate and conduct business.
Right. And yeah, and I think as a follow-up to that, Nicole, to what you just mentioned, I mean, what do you think is the CDC's ultimate goal?
Yeah, Christian. So the CDC's ultimate goal is to prevent clients and their employees from being exposed to COVID-19 and protect millions of Americans' well-being and safety. Not only are we saving people's lives, but we're also saving small businesses from going bankrupt and closing their doors to their community members. Strikingly, what we're seeing now, Christian, through this pandemic, according to the Public Policy Institute of California, 56%, let me repeat that number, 56% of California small businesses experience large negative effects from this pandemic. Therefore, today, we are all here to encourage all small businesses, large even, to follow the CDC's protocols to prevent more businesses from closing and from increasing that 56%.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And just one final question. This is so interesting. I mean, what are some of these recommendations that the CDC has recommended for businesses to do during COVID?
Of course, Christian. You know, beyond businesses adopting digital solutions, CDC has recommended businesses to have their employees wear protective equipment such as face masks. But most importantly, the CDC has changed how employees and clients interact on a daily basis by implementing telehealth communication, maintaining a 6 feet distance. Second, the CDC has transformed how businesses reshaped the office life and layouts by monitoring every employee and client symptoms with temperature screenings. Third, the CDC has influenced how companies ensure that their buildings are ready for occupancy by improving ventilations and using outside air environments like we're seeing right now with restaurants. Lastly, the CDC has influenced the implementation of engineering controls in high-risk areas by installing transparent shields or other physical barriers to separate individuals and maintaining physical distancing. All of these implementations could cause an extra expense in our pockets, and it could reassure small businesses to adopt, to strive, and to thrive by reshaping their businesses model as they return to full speed, as Sebastian mentioned with the Disney example.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And I think to what Desiree was talking about earlier as to why voting is so important is because, if businesses are being asked to implement these measures, they're going to need some help, right? And so we want to make sure that we can help them make these adaptation strategies. So thank you for that. I'm going to talk to my local small business right here after this. So, so Magali, I'm going to turn to you next. My question for you is, how has COVID-19 influenced the digital revolution in our healthcare industry? And if you can also introduce yourself.
Hi, Christian. Thank you so much for the question, for having me on the call today. My name is Magali Torres Cervantes, and I'm a third-year student at the University of California, Merced, studying management and business economics. And so in response to your question, since the beginning of the pandemic back in March, the amount of services our healthcare providers have been able to offer in person has been extremely limited. And so this has put our communities, which already suffer from pre-existing conditions, at a much larger risk than our non-minority counterparts, because given our current circumstances, they can no longer receive treatment for their conditions in person. And according to a study conducted by Monique Brown, who is an assistant professor at the University of South Carolina, pre-existing conditions are the root of the disparities we're seeing with COVID-19. And then to further emphasize the professor's research, data provided by the CDC highlights that 21.3 of all COVID-19 fatalities are within our Latino community. So we have to take it upon ourselves to try and decrease these fatalities within our community. And a good way to do this would be providing virtual educational workshops through our local chambers, as Desiree mentioned, on a way of receiving healthcare for pre-existing conditions, but also educating our communities about safety guidelines being implemented by the CDC and where they can be accessed to. So in this case, the new way of receiving healthcare is healthcare services remotely is telehealth, which is the ability to access your healthcare services through either your phone or your computer. And so, for example, if you suffer from a pre-existing condition like diabetes, you can use your phone or any other device to upload food logs, medications, dosing, and blood sugar levels so that information can be reviewed by your main healthcare provider. You can also use online patient portals to see your test results, schedule appointments, request prescription refills, or email your doctor. And so this not only allows for us to combat this pandemic by practicing physical distancing guidelines and not saturating our hospitals, but also further allows for accessibility to healthcare services to people who live in isolated communities. And it makes services more readily available and convenient for people with limited mobility, time, or transportation options too.
Wow, that's amazing. Great. Well, thank you for that. And then finally for this section, Ana Benitez. So this is an important question, so no pressure. But how has the lack of health insurance impacted minority groups with pre-existing health conditions that have made them more susceptible to COVID-19? This is something that's been in the news every single day since this pandemic has started. So what's your answer to that, Ana?
Thank you for that question, Christian. So hi, everyone. My name is Ana Benitez. I am a senior at the University of Laverne, majoring in kinesiology with a concentration in health and human performance. So this is like up my alley up here. I want to reiterate something that Magali has mentioned, which how pre-existing conditions are the root of the disparities we're seeing in COVID-19. In my research, I found a doctor that had done an interview, and they said that no one should be surprised that we're seeing these disparities in COVID-19 disease, because it's been an ongoing national tragedy and shame that we have communities of color throughout our country suffering disproportionate adverse health impacts from a wide variety of health conditions. So now, Christian, you may say, well, Anna, that's a doctor. He's maybe in another state. It's not, we're in California. It's different. Well, the reality is that COVID-19 has disproportionately affected the Latinx community, the Black community, and the Native American community. And to better understand why this is, we have to understand health insurance. And it's a great impact that it's had on the minority groups. So back in 2010, I was like 11, I had no idea what all this was, but there is a study that was done by the changes in health coverage in the race and ethnicity since the ACA, and they showed that 32.6% of the Latino population were uninsured. So 32% of like thousands of millions of Latinos living in the United States. So that following 8 years after that, it decreased to 19% of being uninsured, but that's still a high percentage of people that are uninsured. So the reason why that number dropped was that because during that time, the Obama administration introduced the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act that was ensuring, and it had three primary goals. Is to make affordable health insurance available to low socioeconomic low socioeconomic households, and that's where the majority of the Latino, the Black community fall under, to expand the Medicaid program to include all adults who fall below the poverty line, and to support innovative medical services and delivery methods like Magali had mentioned with telehealth. So although we saw improvements in some racial groups who were uninsured, their numbers dropping, that did not eliminate the current racial and ethnic disparities that we still have faced in our healthcare system. It highlights how drastically COVID-19 has impacted the minority groups and how this is a long-lasting inequity in healthcare system and other socioeconomic challenges that our communities are facing today. So for us here in California, we are beginning to make changes to lessen these disparities. California is the first state, which is great, to offer health benefits to adult undocumented immigrants back in 2019. So this measure was signed by Gavin Newsom. He extended the coverage of Medicaid to 25 years or younger to those who are undocumented. And now we're trying to make it work so that our seniors, are, like my parents say, tercera edad, are covered by this Medicaid program for this upcoming year or the following upcoming year. So now this is a lot of information. I spewed out a lot right now, but one thing I want everybody to take from this is that the outcome of the 2020 presidential election will make news. It's gonna be big. It's gonna influence the future of healthcare, no matter what candidate is elected, from payments to policies to prescription and ongoing rising cost of healthcare. This is the hottest thing that everybody should be discussing, that everybody should be finding out. So we have to be on the lookout for reduced and uninsured population and insurance affordability of healthcare by expanding the Affordable Care Act, Medicare for all who want it, and the continuation of the current state, how we all have it. This is something that will affect everyone, and we should all be aware of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Those are all very important points. And for everyone that's watching this today, these young people, they're going to be the ones making the difference in this election. So not us viejitos, right? But as long as we make sure that young people rise up and use their voice, it's going to help solve a lot of these problems that they're just talking about right now. So thank you to all of you. I want to turn to the next section on education. So Magali, you stay, because I have more questions for you. But Jackie, Juliana, and Jennifer, I want to invite, I think we're all here. So this is a question both for Jennifer and Jackie. So maybe Jackie, if you want to go first, and then Jennifer. But what are some changes that we've seen regarding education because of COVID-19?
Hi, yeah, Christian, thank you so much. So my name is Jacqueline Avina Espinoza, and I'm a recent graduate from Sacramento State. One of the things that we did see come in earlier this year was the HEROES Act, right? And it came in as an update and an amendment to the CARES Act. And what's important about the HEROES Act is that a section of it actually is forgiving student loan debt of up to $10,000 for what they consider economically distressed borrowers. In addition to that, they're also extending payment periods and any interest waivers until September 30th of next year. This means that students will not be required to make a payment, and their loans that they've already taken out will not accumulate interest until that time. And this is huge.
Great. Same question for you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Christian. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Murillo Castro. I am a recent Master's of Education graduate from Ashford. So to answer your question, Christian, let's first address, right, the real reason why change happened in education, specifically in K through 12, is because the issues that we're having in education were now affecting everyone. COVID definitely forced a restructure in education. I mean, when we look at the classroom curriculum, the delivery of that curriculum, and then even the instruction time, that was impacting not only educators, families, but the students who were most vulnerable in such a negative way. Those students were being discriminated by the digital divide that was already present. So as we step back, right, and look at the issues of the digital divide, the achievement gap, the homework gap, these are all issues that were present prior to COVID, and the ones that being affected the most were children who were vulnerable. So students who were low income, children of color, English language learners, those with disabilities, and those who were homeless. I mean, as you look at the students that are in your panel right now, most of us have either been in one or many of these categories, including myself. So the biggest change that we can take from education is that there has been active listening to the educational voices, right? Those by policymakers, by admins, by leaders, by families that are exposing the barriers in education. So the next step that we can do to actually implement the change that's happened and continue growing is taking those barriers, creating steps for them, and then making not only just a sustainable and innovative educational system, but one that is equitable and just for all our students.
Gotcha. And let me stay with you for one more question, Jennifer, and I'll also invite Magali to chime in as well. But you know, as we've been also talking about the November election, like what are some pieces of legislation that we can expect to see on the November ballot, and how they'll affect education?
Yeah, and I think Magali was going to talk about this a little bit more, but we have a couple.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
We got you.
Wrong. I'm sorry. Jackie Magali.
Yeah, no, thank you, Christian. So for the past 40 years, Prop 13 has capped property taxes, but Prop 15 will actually be on the November ballot, and it would essentially amend Prop 13. Prop 15 is currently calling for split roll, which would require commercial and industrial properties to be taxed based on their market value rather than their purchase price, which most oftentimes is much more. And according to the state fiscal analyst, it's predicted that this proposition could generate anywhere from 8 billion to 12.5 billion per year. So while this may seem like a really great win for public education, of the funds remaining after implementation, only 40% would actually be distributed to public schools. And of course, if our property taxes are increasing, this is going to impact our small businesses, especially those that are renting their spaces, as rent prices are also going to increase, and it's going to create rent instability.
Magali?
Thank you, Christian. So yeah, in addition to what Jackie mentioned, there's another piece of legislation I'd like to draw everyone's attention to for this election, and it's Proposition 16. And so this proposition, if passed, would repeal Proposition 209, which was passed back in November of 1996. And so this is huge for marginalized communities. It would allow for the use of affirmative action within our public employment, public education, and public contracting sectors. And so therefore, I'd like to take this time to encourage you all to vote and keep our communities in mind while doing so. You should have all received your mail-in ballot, and if not, the deadline to register to vote is October 19th. Vote keeping in mind that COVID-19 recovery within the education sector goes beyond adjusting funding for education. It also means following the example of companies like Verizon, who have tried to close the digital divide within the LA Union School District, for example, by providing internet hotspots for students to ensure that they all have equitable access to education, especially when learning is completely virtual. Repealing Proposition 209 would allow for us to provide equitable access not only to higher education, but a variety of different sectors at a very large scale for our minority communities. And so this is a huge step in the correct direction. Therefore, I cannot stress enough how important it is to vote this election, and that you are making sure to keep our communities in mind and are educated on all pieces of legislation that are on that ballot.
Great. Well, thank you, Magali. Yeah, and for everyone that's watching, I think no matter how you feel about these propositions or particular candidates, it's super important that we all get informed about what's at stake for our community and how all of these things are going to affect us as Latinos. So thank you so much for that. The final question for Juliana in this final section, I'm not sure if I see her, but the census finished last night. So how can we expect census funds to be distributed within education? There you are, Juliana.
Hi, Christian. Thank you for the question. My name is Juliana Govea Delgadillo. I'm a third-year management and business economics major at UC Merced. And personally, I believe COVID has impacted everyone differently. Unfortunately, something that a bunch of people have faced is the financial hardships that have came from COVID, which have impacted students and their family. Not only was unemployment almost at 15% in April, but also earlier in the year, Governor Newsom announced that that due to COVID-19, there was a $54 billion budget deficit, which is huge. Like personally, I can't wrap my head around how much that is. Unfortunately, as we've seen in the past, education is the first to be cut whenever there's a deficit or a debt. So there was worrisome that with less money going into education, there would be less staff and overall less resources, especially resources that were vital as education was going completely online. And many students don't even have access to these resources on a daily, with many families having 2, 3, or even 4 kids. So doing homework and classroom work was going to be really difficult. Even though there is still this huge debt, we will expect the federal funding for education to be filled with the census. They will provide extra funding that will help K-12 schools, specifically with special education, food assistance programs such as a free and reduced lunch that many low-income families depend on, and also classroom technology, which was super important, like I mentioned, as a curriculum was going completely online. In addition to the census will also help fund higher education programs such as grants and loans to help with tuition costs, and also with mental health services, which is also really important. So overall, the census were extremely important for funding education, especially during these times.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you to all of you for tackling the education section. The final section, the last couple of minutes that we have for all of you today is just picking up the topic around business. So Sandra, Zane, Ezekiel, and Cynthia, I invite you to turn on your cameras. And Sandra, I'm going to go to you first. A very basic question, but probably one of the most important ones today. Why is investing into the community so important?
Thank you for your question, Christian. Right, why should businesses, whether they're small or large, focus on outreach during the middle of a global pandemic? And many companies are struggling a little bit financially, and it's really hard to really know what the community wants from you right now when you can't even see each other in person. But I can give you a couple of tips for that and a couple of reasons why it's so important. First of all, it's positive branding. You're able to attract new customers, boost morale, and attract top talent, as well as providing yourself and your company with several networking opportunities to engage with your community. But most importantly, it really sets you apart and it helps you differentiate your business. When consumers are faced with the choice between products of similar quality and price, they have to use other factors to make decisions. For example, Wells Fargo offers banking services as many other companies do, but because they're able to give back to their community, like they're giving back to us today and throughout this whole convention, it really helps people choose Wells Fargo over the other companies. 78% of Americans would tell others to buy products and services from purpose-driven companies. But you may be thinking, how can small businesses give back, especially when funds are tight? Well, I have a few tips for that. Support your fellow small businesses. Yes, you can actually go out and purchase their products or their services, but it's also really important to utilize your platform in your community, whether it's through word of mouth and sharing and referring, or it can be by using your social media platform to really give them a voice and share their small businesses. Another really great way is to find a local organization in your community and stick with it. You don't necessarily have to donate monetary sponsorships, but you can work with them on referral programs, and you can also help them out by sharing your time and your employees' time. Another really great way is to offer your time and expertise to those who will shape the world of tomorrow. I'm talking high school students, students at your local community colleges, as well as organizations at the local universities around you. When you are giving your time and sharing your story, your challenges, and your whole overall journey, you're able to extend opportunities for to really ensure the growth of the youth in your community. And finally, staying connected with your customers and your community by really being open to criticism and willing to grow during this time of hardship will help your business build a lasting relationship with the members of your community.
That's really great advice. So yeah, so for those of you watching, don't be afraid of the Yelp reviews. Just take it as constructive criticism. So Ezekiel, I'll turn to you next. Why is investing into your business marketing so crucial?
Hey, so I'm Ezekiel. I'm a recent graduate from Cal State Fullerton Business Schools. While investing in your marketing during a crisis like this might sound counterintuitive, if we look back at history, such as the Great Depression, Kellogg's invested into their marketing, while Post, the #1 cereal brand in the nation at the time, decided to cut back on it. Well, looking back on history, Kellogg's was able to surpass Post as the #1 cereal brand in the United States, and Post has never been able to catch up to that #1 spot, and Kellogg still holds it. So when I say investing into your business, I don't necessarily just mean monetarily. One very great free tool that every business can utilize is Google My Business. It is an easy platform to get invested into. It is almost like the same information that you started your business. You need the address, you need store hours, phone number, photos, whatever you want to put on there, whatever service you provide, it'll show up there. After digging into a little bit of research, it was shown that 86% of people look at Google Maps to find the hours of operations and how to get there. And if you use Google My Business, you can register all the information that's needed during this COVID time. So you could talk about all the COVID precautions you're taking, if dining in is open, your hours, the phone, the menu, the services that you provide. So it's a very great and easy free tool that can be used there. Another great tool is Facebook ads. While all these small businesses live in their community, as Sandra was speaking, they communicate and they get involved with other small businesses in the area, whether it be monetarily or just supporting another business. You can promote yourself through Facebook ads or just using Facebook in general. Facebook ads will allow you to do geo-targeting in a specific area and choose the correct people that you want to target for your business, such as you own a dress shop and you want to target young women in a specific range. Well, you could do that. And it will really stretch your dollar because you're very narrow into what you want.
Gotcha. So, yeah, and forgive me for cutting in, Ezekiel, because I know we're running out of time, but I also want to bring in Zane to this conversation. So Zane, I mean, why is public relations so important for businesses right now too? Because I think that was touching upon what Ezekiel was talking about.
Yeah, so what Ezekiel and what even Sandra were talking about are the bulk of what public relations is. I'm Zane Landon. I'm currently a public relations major at Cal Poly Pomona. So definitely can talk on this topic because I love public relations. And specifically what they're both talking about is public relations. Public relations is the human approach to a business. It is the storytelling of what their narrative is. So what exactly a company is doing different or what an organization is doing uniquely, public relations should be able to show it and express it. And so when we talk about economic resiliency, I'm thinking of public relations because they're the ones that are going to be the root of the relationships that are developed during these times. And so when you look at things like Black Lives Matter, COVID-19, the election, all these upcoming events, companies have had to adapt very fast. And either it's marketing or it's consumerism, or if it's advertising or public relations, they all have an overlap. And I think public relations really is what's creating the human approach, and that's what's creating the innovation that we have right now. And so that's why I think public relations is really important, is because that's what's going to drive the relationships right now. And if you connect with your community, you connect with different people, and the more you connect, your audience is just going to increase, and you're just going to develop new relationships and partners, and it's exciting.
Awesome, all excellent points. And so in the last 2 minutes that we have, Cynthia, the most important question: what are some ways small businesses can prepare for the future, for future emergencies and future pandemics?
Yes, thanks for the question, Christian. So my name is Cynthia. I am a senior at San Jose State University, where I'm pursuing a degree in finance. And on to your question, it's absolutely crazy to think about another emergency when we haven't even finished getting through this pandemic. But it's extremely important to be prepared. This pandemic has clearly impacted everyone, especially small businesses. Therefore, moving forward for small businesses, it is extremely important to take initiative and take steps towards being prepared for any future disaster, emergency, or even another pandemic. The SBA and the IRS offer some great resources and tips to get the process started. Starting with the IRS, they recommend having a paperless recording of all transactions and major yearly financial documents. Not only is this a good business practice, but this will ease the process in the future when applying for loans and grants. It is also recommended to manage your finances on a regular basis. Don't wait until tax season. Be organized. And Wells Fargo is one of our sponsors. Make sure to utilize them. They offer many resources and they are here to help you. In addition to the IRS, the SBA offers many resources like specific disaster checklists, assistant loans, and much more. A recent US Census Bureau surveyed over 90,000 small businesses, and they found that 38.1% did not receive funding. And that was for lack of preparedness. Don't be part of that 38% of small businesses. Be prepared for any future emergency by having your financial documents handy. In addition, create an emergency plan for your business. Create a reserve fund for your business. Make it your mission to ensure your small business doesn't miss out on a future recovery opportunity following an emergency. Use the tips given by the IRS and the SBA, and also utilize the CHCC because we are here to support our Hispanic community.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Cynthia. And thank you to everybody. If you all can turn your cameras back on. So we're just at time. I like to keep things to schedule. So for everyone that's watching today, I sure hope that you all took notes. Please take a screenshot. I expect to see job offers for every single one of these students right now, because these are such valuable pieces of advice that is very useful to everyone right now. So, and I'm serious, job offers for everyone, and pay them well. So thank you so much to the young students. And thank you to all of you for watching. This has just been a fantastic conversation. And I hope it gives you hope and optimism for the future. And again, make sure to vote. The last day to vote is November 3rd. So everyone should have their ballots by now. So I encourage you to vote as early as possible. So thank you all very much.